Hello, hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. You're watching SOS. My name is Lakeisha Hines, and we are talking about something that, a lot of people don't enjoy talking about. They get a little uncomfortable about it, but it is extremely necessary that we have this conversation. Very, very important that we have this conversation. I know that, when you are dealing with infidelity in your relationship, many, many times one spouse may accuse the other spouse of being a sex addict, or the person who cheated, the betrayer, may actually self diagnose and say, I think I have a sex addiction, or the betrayed may diagnose their spouse because you know what? It has to make sense, right? The ultimate goal is to understand the why behind the what. And so if you're a sex addict, that makes sense. You were not in control. You had no idea what you were doing, and you were just moving, right? You were just giving into those urges, those temptations, those desires, and you really didn't know what you were doing and you weren't in control of your body. So that makes sense. And I can wrap my brain around that. But if someone doesn't have an answer and they can't tell you the why behind the what, it makes it so much more difficult to heal and to move forward and even to forgive. And underneath all of that is fear. Fear that we're going to repeat that same behavior if we're unable to identify a why. And so, with that being said, when we are self diagnosing or diagnosing someone else with a sexual addiction, we have to be careful. It is a real thing. And so, we don't ever want to get in a place where we are, one, taking the easy way out by saying, oh, I have a sex addiction and nobody diagnosed you with that, or giving the person a way out by saying it must be a sex addiction that you have. So, we're going to dive a little deep into these signs of sex addiction. And just so you know, just because you or your spouse may exhibit one of these behaviors, or maybe even two of these behaviors, it doesn't automatically mean that you are a sex addict or your spouse is a sex addict. You need to go see someone to get a proper diagnosis and determine if that, in fact, is the case. All right. So, at the end of the day, we know sex is a very, very healthy part of life, right? But some people, it can consume their entire lives. And so then they ask themselves, man, especially if they have a high libido, am I addicted to sex? Do I have a problem with it? Is my spouse addicted to sex? If you have a low libido and you're with someone with a high libido, you may think that they have a sex addiction because they want it all the time. But no, it just could be that they have a really high libido. Okay. So it's normal to desire your partner and to want to have sex with your partner. I mean, hopefully, you both desire each other and you want to have um that intimacy, that physical intimacy with each other. And hopefully you both have very vigorous libidos. But there is a tipping point. There is a space and time where sexual desire can go from being healthy to being out of control. And I just want to say, please let me know who you are and where you're streaming from so I can shout you out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I will answer them. I want to say there's a difference between enjoying sex and being addicted to sex. When we're talking about a healthy sexual appetite, it can be controlled. It can be controlled. And if sex is unavailable, it is disappointing, not devastating. There's a difference, because when there's a sexual addiction, the addict themselves, they feel desperate to have his or her sexual outlet no matter what the cost. And we're not thinking about the cost. We just have to get that itch scratched, for lack of better words, and then we have to have that sexual outlet. So I'm going to give you some signs of how you can spot sex addiction, keeping in mind that if you or your spouse has one or more of these things, that automatically does not mean that you have a sex addiction. You want to go see someone, you want to get an official, proper diagnosis. All right. But let's start with the signs. Very first one, sex dominates the individual's life. Sex dominates the individual's life. Okay. I don't want to do nothing else but have sex. That's all I want to do. We don't ever have to go to a movie. We don't ever have to go out to dinner. We don't ever have to have a date night unless it's just going to be a date for sex. That is typically the life of a sex addict. All they want to do is have sex and are not concerned with any other types of activities. Another sign, the individual engages in phone sex, computer sex, use of prostitutes, pornography, or even exhibitionism. So, again, these are just ways that they will continue to have that feeling, right? Even if no one is readily available, right? If we can, I mean, physically for them to have sex with, well, we can have phone sex because that's still sex. We can have computer sex. And then obviously, if a prostitute is involved, then that's someone physically present. But pornography, that's still giving them an opportunity to engage in sexual activity and exhibitionism. Of course, it's all about being sexual, all about being focused on the genitals, being focused on intercourse, being focused on self pleasure, and how can I get that next fix? How can I get that next high? And it doesn't matter how I go about doing that, be it on my own or with someone else, which leads me to the next signs that the person habitually masturbates. Okay, so I need to park here for a moment because I already know what you're going to say. Lakeisha, are you saying that if I masturbate or if my spouse masturbates, that automatically means that me or we are sex addicts? Absolutely not. There are some people who enjoy masturbation and they want to do that because it makes them happy or it feels good to them. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with having a sex addiction. When you think about a sex addiction, which again, I told you, you need to go see somebody if you're questioning whether or not this is what you have, okay? Because there is an official diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM abbreviation, for that. But it defines sex addiction as a compulsive need to perform sexual acts in order to achieve the kind of fix that a person with alcohol use disorder gets from a drink, or someone with opioid use disorder gets from using opiates. So it is a compulsion. And so when you think about compulsion, what that means is we can't control it, right? It's compulsive sexual behavior, and it should not be confused with things like pedophilia or bestiality because those are different. But sex addiction can be extremely dangerous and it will cause difficulties with relationships. It truly has the potential to negatively impact a person's physical, mental health, personal relationships, quality of life, safety, all of that, which leads me to my next point, that the individual has multiple sexual partners and may even cheat. And oftentimes, there isn't protection used all the time to protect against STIs. And a lot of times, there may be unwanted pregnancies and connecting with people who, you have no desire or intention of being involved with beyond that experience. And then obviously, if infidelity occurs, of course, that can truly destroy, ruin, and end a relationship. And so many times there are multiple sex partners there because, again, they just cannot get enough. No matter how often their spouse gives them sex, no matter how open or willing, they are to engage in sexual activity with their spouse, it's just not enough. It's not enough. So, they're having these chronic obsessive sexual thoughts and fantasies, which is what leads them to want to watch the porn, to want to maybe even engage in voyeurism, where they're watching other people having sex. But they just have to be around it because it's obsessive. And again, having sex with strangers, these multiple partners, many times they're one night stands. They don't even know the person's name. They're not even trying to get to know them in that way. It's just all about getting their fix, right? There's usually a lot of lying that goes on because they have to lie to be able to cover up their behaviors. And, again, there's just because of that obsession and the compulsivity that comes with it, they're preoccupied all the time with having sex. And it really interferes with work performance and how productive they are in lives. God forbid, we're talking business owners, the business can fail because they're so preoccupied with having sex. And again, one of the biggest signs to look for is that they just seem to not have the ability to stop or to control the behaviors. And then that willingness to put themselves in danger, let alone someone else because of their sexual behavior, that is a telltale sign a lot of times again that there's a sex addiction. Um, I think this one is really really hard again when infidelity creeps in because one of the ways that the betrayed is able to move forward and forgive and to heal is because they're seeking that certainty that this won't happen again. But if we're dealing with a sex addict, they don't have that certainty that it won't happen again because again we're talking about compulsive behaviors and things that they're not able to control. So if you have a sex addiction, how can you guarantee me that there will not be infidelity again? What assurances do I have? And it makes it very difficult for that recovery process. So I want to go ahead and pause here for a moment and say good morning, Papette, Don Juan, Farai, George, Montre. Hey, Jewel. Hey, Gonzalez, Team Smith in the house. And I would like to now address, looks like some questions here in the chat. So let's go ahead and dive into those. Mr. George Henry says, why do some women feel free to share their sexual fantasies with a thug or a bad boy, but when that woman gets older and meets a working class or professional man, she shuts down on him sexually? Oh, and you go on to say, even if that professional man has swag or edge. George, I love your question. I love your question because this is a very common thing that happens. And so I think it may be different for each woman. And so if you're specifically talking about your woman, then I would say that you have to ask her what is the why behind the what. What attracts her to thugs or bad boys? Is it the danger? Is it the mysteriousness of it? Is it that does she get an adrenaline rush because it is a thug or a bad boy and like she may think that something um might happen while the two of them are together, and just that excitement of potentially being in danger, does that do it for her? So I think it's really a matter of asking the particular woman who you are involved with, if this is someone you're involved with, the why behind their what. I think that many times it is, if they have had to be conservative and they have had to be good their entire lives, getting with a bad boy or a thug feels freeing to them. I think that there's some envy, jealousy, even, or admiration that they have, and fascination with the fact that they don't have those responsibilities, right? That they can just live their lives, be free. Nobody's telling them what to do, and they're in control. And I think that there is something that's attractive about that to certain women, like I said, especially those who have kind of lived very structured, sheltered lives. And I see that you go on to say this is for your daughter. So it's a question. Maybe she's bored by the working class and professional man. Maybe he's not adventurous enough for her. And when I say dangerous, like, obviously you want your daughter with someone who is going to keep her safe and protect her, but also not end up in jail, right? So maybe it's not necessarily that she wants someone who engages in criminal activity, but she wants someone who is has a certain level of swag, but who is tough and who is strong and who makes her feel safe and makes her feel like, she can be adventurous with him. And, I don't know if you want me to go here with you because this is about your daughter, but you are watching SOS, so no disrespect, Mr. George. But maybe the working class or the professional man isn't showing up for her the way that she desires in the bedroom. And so she wants a man who is going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more adventurous, and show up in a different way sexually with her in the bedroom. But again, that's a question, you know, that you have to ask her. I don't know. Montre goes on to say, can people recover? Absolutely. Absolutely, Montre. People absolutely can, and they absolutely do, but they do require treatment. Just like anybody with any type of addiction, be it alcohol or drug or whatever, you have to be in treatment. So they have to be in treatment. And if they are and they're consistent and they set up the proper boundaries and they are open and honest with their partner, they can recover and the relationship can recover and they can have healthy relationships, but they must do the work. There's no getting around doing the work. So I want to pause here for a moment. We're going to take a quick break. Don't swipe left or right. Don't you go anywhere. Okay. We will be right back. You're watching SOS, and I will answer the rest of your questions on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Hey everybody, Hassani and Danielle here. I'm so excited. Look at us. Look at where we at. Look at where we at. We are at the Hilton Alpharetta, looking at this room before the incredible transformation that's about to take place on October 7th. Walls draped, stage up, lights, camera, action. And we want y'all to be there.
Are you going to be here?
Come on, get your tickets. It's October 7th. You don't want to miss this event. It is the Phoenix Awards Gala. It is our first inaugural, and we're just getting started. But we starting hot.
Oh yeah, we got.
We jumping out this gate like never before.
We believe either you go hard or you go home.
Go hard
we're not
going to
be home. We're going to be
go
in this
hard or go
house
home.
where you need to be.
Come on,
So let's get it.
we want to see you on October 7th. Go to get your tickets at couplesacademy.com. We'll see you there.
Hello, hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. You're watching SOS. I'm Lakeisha Hines, and today we are talking about whether or not you have a sex addict in your bedroom, or if you are a sex addict and you're in that bedroom. But before I dive back into these topics, man, if you don't have your tickets for the Phoenix Awards Gala, what are you waiting for? I'm going to be there. Hassani and Danielle will be there. Julian Gonzalez will be there. Roland and Janella are going to be there. My boo thing, my baby daddy, my boyfriend, my husband, he's gonna be there. Walter Charmaine gonna be there. Jeff is gonna be in the house. Listen, the entire Couples Academy team will be in the building, and you need to be there with us. And I promise you, it will be a night that you will not forget. Doesn't matter if you're married, doesn't matter if you're dating, doesn't matter if you're single and ready to mingle. There's something there for everybody. So get your tickets today, couplesacademy.org/events, and get your face in the place. Okay. I want to make sure I see you on October 7th in Alpharetta. All right. So excuse me, let's dive back into these questions, which you guys, I love your questions. Papette, hey there. You are so faithful. Thank you for being here, Papette, and everybody else who's here today. I appreciate you. Your question regarding libido, is dirty 30s a real thing for women? I couldn't find any info online about increased libido, only decreased. I got to 33 and I'm sorry. Clearly you see that I did not read the questions before I started asking. I mean, before before I started reading the questions. Um let me tell you something. I love this question. And like I said, you really just caught me completely off guard and I love it. I'm not easily shocked. You see, I couldn't even hold it. So, dirty 30s, is it a real thing? You couldn't find anything. As you were researching, you got to 33 and practically turned into a teenage boy. Man, absolutely. Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, right, our sex drives change throughout the years. It's so crazy because and then I said, I oftentimes ask God, I'm like, Lord, why you did it this way? Like you just did this to keep us on our toes, right? So that we have to continue to pray to you and seek out your face for everything that concerns us because we are not on the same level at the same time. So, men in their 20s, it is so high. Their testosterone level is so high in their 20s. Therefore, so is their sex drive, but they're so anxious at that time about sex. And believe it or not, 8%, 8% of men in their 20s actually report erectile dysfunction, not because there's something physically going on with them, but because of the anxiety. Sometimes it is medical, right? But many times it's mental. It's not even medical. So, women in their 20s, we're fertile, we are more fertile at that time. And so a lot of times mentally, we kind of slow down because we're thinking about getting pregnant and we don't want to be. So it's a mental thing for us in our 20s where we typically don't have as high of a sex drive as men as we're going through all the different hormonal changes and everything. Men in their 30s and 40s, they still continue to have a strong sex drive, but their testosterone starts to decrease around 35, and it typically will go down like about 1% per year, and even faster for some men, which ultimately can affect their sex drive. Plus, think about it, they're working, typically have families, they're married or whatever. So they have the not only work stress, but they have family stress. And if there are problems in the marriage, and that causes problems as well. Now, us ladies in our 30s and 40s, our sex drive is the strongest in 30s and 40s. Literally, there was a study that was done that actually showed that women between the ages of 27 and 45 had more frequent and more intense sexual fantasies than younger women and older women. And they actually have more sex and are more likely to have sex sooner in the relationship. Now, the thing that impacts us as women probably the most is when we become mothers, because again, that just throws your body out of whack. You're not feeling sexy, especially if you gain weight, if you're nursing, that affects your hormones. And so it doesn't matter what age you're at, pregnancy and becoming a new mom, that definitely impacts your hormone levels and can impact your sex drive positively and negative. Because there's some women while they're pregnant, the hormones all over the place. They're like extremely horny and they want to have sex all the time. And then after the baby comes, when the hormones shift and change again, they're like, "Don't touch me." So for women, it's a little tricky for us. But yes, Popette, 30s and 40s, practically turning into a teenage boy. I love it. All right. Where are we? Where are we? Montre says maybe no judgment. Uh-oh. Montre says maybe no judgments coming from thugs. They thrive on low no morals. Hmm, I don't really know. Maybe that was in response to you, George. Um, yeah. Okay. Is it Desmi? Um, is it normal for a betrayed spouse to be hypersexual after a betrayal? It feels like I'm trying to feel what the affair partner had with my spouse. Okay, so now that I know, Desmi, you are female, I will say Mrs. Childs, absolutely 100% normal. And it is a lot of times about trying to feel what the affair partner felt. A lot of times it's about, I'm going to give you something that you did not get with the affair partner. I'm going to sex you so good that you're not going to go back to this other person. It could be because you just want to feel close and connected, because oftentimes couples have felt so disconnected from their spouses prior to there being infidelity, and then the affair occurs, D-Day occurs, and you just want to feel connected, and you'll take that in any way you can, and you want a quick fix, and so you think sex is going to fix it, but in actuality, when you re-engage too soon, it actually does more harm than good. So, but I just wanted to confirm for you, validate your feelings, that absolutely it is normal to be hypersexual, because again, it's really about the closeness and the connection, and you want to feel anything other than pain. And so if you think you can get some pleasure out of sex, like, yes, sign me up, give me that, because I need some pleasure. I'm having way too much pain and I just need a release. I just need something to make me feel better. So yeah, I see what you just put. It's it's not about shame. It's, at the end of the day, that's your spouse and you want to be connected with your spouse, right? You want to be on the same page and on the same wavelength, and you want to reconnect it because you probably have been disconnected for so long that it's like, now that this affair has happened, it's like you're panicking, like, oh my gosh, I got to hurry up and bring us together. So some of the things that you may want to think about is, um are you doing what you're doing out of fear, or is it being done out of a desire to connect and to heal and to move forward? Okay. So spend some time thinking about that, because the why behind your what is so powerful. What is the motivation? What is the intent? Because if the motivation is to connect, then that's a completely different scenario from a motivation to control, and a motivation. And when I say control, I mean trying to control because you're afraid that they're going to cheat again. So I'm going to try to control this situation and my spouse and their urges and their desires and where they look. I'm just going to get them all wrapped up in me so that they're not thinking about anybody else. That's completely different. So get to the root of your why. And that should help you understand whether or not, or make a decision about whether or not you should continue engaging. Uh, Poppet goes on to say, for real, I was hypersexual in my 20s, had a baby at 30, and couldn't stand the thought of being touched. Then literally one day woke up and poor hubby didn't know what hit him. Yes. And then you go on to say, yes, the child was the instigator for his infidelity. Unfortunately, he doesn't have spare energy for that anymore. Yeah, I get it. This is common. That it's common in relationships. And then you go on to say, I think if I knew about the infidelities before my hormones exploded, it would have been, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because you know th- now your emotions would have taken over the hormones. Right? So that makes complete and total sense to me, that you would have moved differently had you known about the infidelity. But at the end of the day, um here at Cubs Academy, we want you all to do the work. We want you to do the necessary work so that you can heal, so that you can get back to enjoying and exploring and engaging in physical intimacy with one another. But we also want you to connect mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well, because those are the things that'll sustain you. You have to ask yourself a question, and this is something that one of our fellow practitioners will ask often, Charmaine Jennings. She will say, what if sex was off the table? Think about it. In your marriage, what if sex was off the table because of physical reasons? What would you do? So that's why we have to connect in these other areas, so we ensure that sex isn't the only thing that binds us together. Okay. So Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, get your gala tickets today. Tell them Lakeisha sent you when you purchase your ticket. And I want to see your face in the place next month. But we will be back here next week, same time. Make sure your face is in the place. Love you all. Have a great day. Be blessed. See you next Tuesday.